Hello, welcome to the Very Wool podcast. My name is Diana Hawthorne, and you can find me online as Delaware Spinster. I have a bit of a shorter episode potentially today. No big finished objects, but I do want to talk to you about my whips and where I am in my Geogradient. And then I want to talk a little bit about Maryland Sheep and Wool because it's next weekend and it's a really special event for me and for many of us, honestly, in this area. So I want to tell you first what I'm wearing. This was actually in honor of Maryland Sheep and Wool. I'm wearing a Rhinebeck sweater. I made this specifically for Rhinebeck 2022. Not that it was a special sweater that other people were wearing at that time specifically, but it was really exciting to me when I went to Rhinebeck for the first time to make a sweater, and it was way too hot. If you were there that year, you know it was way too hot to be wearing this sweater. But anyway, I love how the sweater came out, and I still wear it a lot. So I'm just gonna stand back here so you can see a lot of the colors. So this pattern is a free pattern from Hedgehog Fibres or Beata Jezek. It's called Le Pouf, and normally it has these big Pouf sleeves or balloon sleeves. I loved the fade that she did. I love marling, but I'm not into Pouf sleeves, so I called mine Le No Pouf. It does not have that sleeve, but I really love the way that it came out, and I still think it's a nice sweater. It has this pretty open scoop neck. I like the way she does the, it's not quite short rows. There's another term for it. And I can't remember what the term is exactly, but basically you start flat working back and forth and working the short rows, and then you start to combine it. So I think it's called something like alternate start or gradual start or something. But then you go back and pick up the collar, which I'm always happy to do. I like that it's more of an open collar, especially my version of it. I like the way it sits. It's a nice raglan sweater. Again, crazy that this is a free pattern to me. Good for her. I really appreciate that. I did a lot of my own dyeing, but this is really special. I had purchased some of these yarns on my honeymoon. And I'm trying to think of the dyer for these. I really like her stuff. It's gonna come to me. But, oh, Momma Jess Knits. She has an Etsy shop, but I happened to be in Virginia in a local yarn shop there, and I saw a couple of these colors, and this is Bunsen, which I'm still obsessed with. Why didn't I get multiple skeins? A few years back, I just wasn't really shopping that way. It was special to get one or two skeins, and I would mostly get multiple things. It works great as a gradient, so you know that's totally fine. But yeah, you can see this orange, this second color, which they marl together here. You're holding two fingering strands. You hold the same one doubled, and then you hold two different ones, and then you double the next one, and that's sort of how it goes along. That's another one of her colors there. So in total, this one also across the bust is one of hers, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And then I had other stuff in my stash, like older sock yarn for a couple of these, the pink and the purple, the ones in the middle, and then these ones are all my hand-dyed yarns. So I intentionally dyed a couple. I didn't want it to leap from here to there, so I did a couple to fill in the gradient, and I'm so happy with it, how it came out. I absolutely love it. It's not everybody's thing to wear a gradient or a fade. It's definitely my thing. I wear a lot of stuff like this. And overall, I'm really happy with how it came out. There are a couple of yarns that could it have been better if I did something differently, if I didn't use such a variegated yarn. Yeah, I'm learning over time, and I would have mostly gone with tonal and speckled, and there are one or two yarns that I might have cut from this. However, I love the way it came out. I love the way it fits. I think it's flattering on me, and I find it comfortable. So, and it's held up really well. Now, admittedly, I have enough sweaters, and especially pullovers. I don't wear pullovers all that often. I'm getting better at it. When I only had two homemade sweaters, I definitely had the idea that things were special and I could only pull this out for this special occasion, and that has gone out the window. I definitely, I don't dye yarn in my handmade sweaters. I'm not doing crazy things. I'm not cleaning fleece in a sweater, but I do wear them day to day. I wear them to work. I wear them around, and I just don't think it's as big of a deal. I've learned that, I've got tiny dogs. Sometimes their nails snag on something, and as long as you just kind of fix it, then it's no big deal. So I do wear this more often than I did the first year, and I really love it. So it makes me happy, and I thought it would be a good time to wear it now because I am about to go to Maryland Sheep and Wool, and I don't anticipate going to Rhinebeck this year. It's a much bigger drive for me, which if Delaware, if you geographically know where that is. New York Sheep and Wool is not impossible. It's certainly a reasonable place to get to, but it's also a really busy season at work. It just doesn't work out for me to get there every year. So Maryland Sheep and Wool is a little bit different, and I'm very excited to get there. It's not far away, and I went last year for the first time. I had the honor of being able to volunteer in the fleece sale. So I went last year. I'm doing the same thing again this year. I've got shifts on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I'm really excited to get there, and I'm really excited to help people shop for fleece. I should not buy a lot of fleece this year. I have a lot of wool. I really shouldn't be buying fleece, but we'll see. Next week I'll talk to you about what I ended up getting. But it is really exciting to be part of the fleece sale, and it's really exciting to be at the festival. I find it, as an introvert, it's sort of exhausting, frankly. Like, I find at the end of the weekend, I feel pretty awful. So it's not really much of a vacation when you're standing on concrete floors or out in the hot sun and in a huge crowd. But at the same time, it's super exciting. So I still really do recommend, with acknowledging that it's exhausting for me and for a lot of people, honestly, who like yarn. I think it's worth it to do that kind of thing once or twice a year. I admire people who can go to more festivals than that. I just can't. I think it's a little bit too challenging for me, just in terms of the overwhelming nature, like everything going on and everything you want to see and rushing around to get to different booths. So I don't know how much shopping I'm going to do. I will definitely share with you any acquisitions that I have next week. But if you happen to be there, feel free to stop by the fleece tent. I hope I run into you, and let me know what you like about Maryland Sheep and Wool in the comments. I think it's awesome. If you have another regional fiber festival that you go to, share that too. I'm always looking for excuses to travel and check out other festivals. So I'm fortunate that this is probably our vacation of the year, is just a weekend trip to Maryland Sheep and Wool, but my husband tolerates that well. So yeah, so that's the big thing of the week. I did not have any huge finished objects this week. I did finish the 2 pairs of socks that we talked about last week. And they're both sort of shorty socks. They're both just one yarn. And they're not, I don't want to just say stash busting, because they're really not. I had a good amount of these, but they were both yarns that had been in my stash for a little while. And I've already worn both of the socks, so they're not like in perfect mint condition. It's interesting that I feel like what's soft on my feet, I'm learning, is not the same thing that's soft on my hands, if that makes sense. I was really excited about these ones. This is that Knit One Crochet Two Pettywick yarn, which doesn't exist anymore, that I got years back at Sea Needles in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. But it's super, super soft, like bamboo and nylon, I think, is the combination. And on my feet, it feels absolutely fine. I like it, but it's not all that soft. I found that really interesting. I thought this was going to be like pampering my feet. And it's no softer than the woolen nylon that I have. So, I'm learning still about what I like and what I don't like in a sock. And I still like these as socks and I'm going to get a lot of wear out of them. They're not less soft than other things, but I don't think that they're really more soft, interestingly. So anyway, so I thought that was interesting when I wore those for the first time this week. The other thing that I finished, and I wish I could share it with you actually as a finished object. I'm just going to show you the box. I got Hedgehog Fibres. I got their puzzles when they came out earlier, I guess in the end of last year. And I highly recommend. So this is Speckle. Sorry for puzzle noises. So the puzzle itself, I mean, it's just pictures of her beautiful yarn. Like, how can you go wrong? And as you know, I like a fade or a gradient. So like her yarns, they're just fantastic. And I so enjoyed staring at this, but I'm going to be honest, it took me so long, and that's why I'm sharing it. Normally I do like a puzzle a month. I'm very particular about puzzles, but I love puzzles. And this is a beautiful puzzle. I will definitely do it again sometime. I hope I didn't lose any pieces, which is always a risk when I'm taking them apart. I feel like I'm always going to lose a piece. But it just took forever because ultimately, I mean, a good portion of it, and like the design goes around the side on the box, so you can't even see all of it. Good portion of it is orange and a lot of it's pink, and it all has the exact same squiggles and whatnot and speckles. It was really fun, but it took me so many months. I'm doing like a palette cleanser, like a super easy puzzle right now. But anyway, I thought that was relevant because I don't know how much longer she's going to sell. I got both of the puzzles that she sold last year, but I would highly recommend it. If you love yarn, it's pretty fun. So I wanted to talk to you about just a couple more socks that I'm working on and a lesson that I learned and a new plan that I'm sort of putting together. So as I said, I'm going to Maryland Sheep and Wool next weekend. It's not super far away because I like to knit in the car. My husband pretty much does all the driving, which is pretty nice. I won't get any crafting done at the fair because, as I said, I'm working the fleece tent. And if I do any shopping, it's going to be like rapid, I've got 30 minutes after my shift. I'm going to, go shop and then leave. I don't imagine I'm going to be spending a lot of time walking on the fairgrounds because I don't need anything and the temptation really gets to me. But I wanted to think of like when I'm tired at the end of the day or after I've been at the fairgrounds for 8 hours, then, what am I going to want to do in the hotel? And one thing I thought of was finishing socks, because if I get them to this point on the machine, it's pretty simple to, I'll have a bunch of ends here that I need to bury. And then at the end, I need to graft these together, the toe together. And so basically I'm going to try and have like 4 or 5 pairs of socks. I've already got 3. So pretty doable this week to crank out a couple of more. So that way I feel like that's something that I can do in the car. It's also something that I can do when I'm pretty tired and I don't need the world's best lighting, because I'm thinking like hotels, not always the best lighting, although I will bring my neck light because that's who I am. So anyway, so I know I had shared last week as a finished object my first self-striping socks, and those were made with this same yarn, the Freckled Whimsy. Failures are okay, and I used the actual hot pink, the contrast color with them for the heels and toes. In this case, I used another color from my stash, hand-dyed yarn dyed by me. This was an unnamed colorway that was, just an experimental speckle colorway that actually is in this sweater. It was one of the kind of fill colors that I thought would help transition between two of my other stash colors. So because I only used a little bit in the sweater, I had quite a bit left, and I've been using it for a few heels and toes, and yeah, I think speckled heels and toes are kind of fun. So I did these, and then I still had more of this yarn. And so then I'd made two basically shorty socks, but I'm not like a tall sock person. And then I was like, what do I do with this yarn? And this is where my new sort of adventure is going to come in. I really didn't know what to do. And as I've discussed before, I don't dye self-striping sock yarn. I understand technically the process for doing it, and it is a ton of work. I have so much admiration for the people who do it, and that's why I am willing to full price buy self-striping sock yarn, where a lot of times, sometimes I see hand-dyed yarn and I think, I could make that, or I kind of have a color like that. That's not true with self-striping. It's not true in a lot of cases. I like other dyers and I like supporting other people too, but I will pay more for a self-striping sock yarn than I will for any other yarn, which makes perfect sense if you know how it's done and how much work it is. So with that in mind, I then also feel like I paid so much for it. I'm so glad I got two pairs of socks out of it, but what do I do with the extra little bit? And I had one solution, which was, okay, what if I combine two different self-striping skeins that would be compatible? Not like trying to fool somebody into thinking it's the same skein, it's not. But in terms of colors, like I thought, what if it's compatible? Let me see if I could do the cuff portion in this yarn that I had a little bit left of, do the contrasting heel, and then use a different self-striping sock yarn for the body of the foot, and then do the contrasting toe. And I thought this color kind of goes well with these colors. Unfortunately, it goes great with like the hot pink, but then that was sort of on the inside, but whatever. So I thought it would look nice. Here's what I learned. So first of all, you don't really know. I didn't remember if I'd seen a swatch of this. This is Glamping from, I want to say Two Sisters Yarn Company, but I'll write it down in the description box. I love this, by the way. I love the way this came out. It's absolutely beautiful. It's less colors, and I knew that, then failures are okay. It also is wider stripes, so they're basically 5 rounds instead of basically 4 rounds. Not a big deal. I don't really care. I just don't love it. I love the yarn. I love all of the pieces of this sock, but when I finished the sock, I was kind of like, meh. I don't know. So what I realized, the sock, it feels similar enough. The two yarns are both like 75% merino, 25% nylon, or somewhere thereabouts. And they're both similar in terms of gauge. Like it worked out fine there. When I did it, I was like, like this is what I was picturing, and yet it's not something that I like. I like contrasting heels and toes. I like that. That's something that not only is it practical with a self-striping yarn that's going to get kind of weird in the heel and toe, but I like it. I don't care for this. I realized I don't really like using two self-striping yarns together. And maybe if I was very particular about always using self-striping yarns that have, what is this, 5 colors from this dyer, and I pick them in advance thinking that seems like a lot of work. And I'm not that much of a planner. Sometimes you have to wait a while to get these yarns anyway. And then I have so much stash that the way it works out when I'm cranking socks, if I'm only working on maybe one a week, which normally I am, or I don't crank a sock for a month, then I may not remember two were supposed to go together in my head. So basically, I think I'm never doing this again. I think lesson learned. I think it takes away from the beauty of this one and the beauty of this one. I think it's totally fine. I will absolutely wear it because I have cranked. Some of my earliest socks were ugly, okay? I'm definitely going to wear it. It's a functional sock. So I'm going to finish it. I'm going to wear it. But I didn't want to make a second one like this because I had a different idea for the leftover self-striping. So because I wanted to have it be somewhat of a match and only use the same amount, the 11 stripes of Glamping, I had enough, just enough of this sort of green speckled color that I just decided, you know what? You mostly see the foot because my jeans come to here, you know, the 2 or 3 different pair of jeans that I always wear when I'm wearing socks. They're going to come down this whole way anyway. Even leggings, I overlap my socks with my leggings. So anyway, so I did this. So it's not like a super intentional or exciting thing. It's just using up more of that hand-dyed random colorway that I had made. And they don't look like a match, and that's okay. That's what the kids are doing nowadays, I've heard. And beyond that, I also don't care. I still think you barely see much of the top anyway. So it feels the same because it's a similar base. That's all that matters to me. It fits the same because it's the same number of stitches and the same number of rows. So yeah, I felt like this was kind of it was an experiment. I knew it was an experiment, but I just kind of felt like no. So with Glamping, I will definitely have enough to make another set of socks. The question is, am I going to have enough to make 2 more pairs of socks? I don't know. And I think that's just part of the process, is kind of not knowing and learning as you go. So anyway, so this is another pair that I'm going to finish next weekend. I have to like resist the urge to finish them this week because I still think it's a good project to take with me that wouldn't be that hard to work on. So what I decided that I'm going to do, until tomorrow or so, there was a sale on Wool and Pine, their stash busting patterns. And I have some of their patterns. I think I may have shared that I'm working on one of them currently actually, I don't think I did share that. Maybe I'll share it next week. I've got one that's a whip already, but they have a lot of stash busting patterns. They have some really cute things. And one of the things I've had my eye on for a long time is the sea glass tee. They have a few different versions. They have a crochet version. They have I think the original sea glass tee. And then they have a sea glass sweater. I actually don't know which came first. The sweater is DK weight. It's still a pullover. It looks similar to the sea glass tee, but it's meant to be DK weight, and you can hold fingering double like I did for this, or not. I felt like the sweater, I think it's more of a crew neck, and I just didn't know if I'd be able to modify that enough and for it to be DK as a pullover when I already have a few pullovers that are DK weight or worsted weight. I thought it's not the right thing for me right now, but I did get the sea glass tee. And I've had a lot of different ideas, and I certainly may make multiple over the years, but the idea that I think I'm going with, I really like when they're crazy. I think if I thought about like all shades of purple. If I just do purple, 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 then what's the point of doing that one by one? The whole way is stranded color work one by one. So if it's a low contrast version, I think it looks great. In some ways, it looks more cohesive. It could be less distracting and just like look like a really nice purple sweater if I did that. But then that's not as fun, and it's not what I tend to do anyway. So I have some things in mind to do, like faded sweaters that are just kind of like this, right? But maybe not even marled, maybe just micro striping. So I thought, you know what, the sea glass tee is an opportunity to use all of my crazy kind of yarns that are, for instance, so variegated that you do a few stitches in this color and then the next few stitches of the next color. those kind of yarns don't always work up well for a t-shirt, and they don't always fit into scrappier projects that I'm doing. Sometimes my scrappy projects, I do want to very much fade from one color to another. And sometimes those kind of yarns that are highly variegated don't work well for that. And the other thing I thought I would use is every time I have a leftover, like a little bit of self-striping sock yarn, and I still have probably about this much, about enough to do this cuff that I didn't do on the other one. I'm going to use it for that. I think it would be really cool to have leftovers from the self-striping sock yarns, because you're going to end up having maybe a whole round, maybe not a whole round, depending on the size of those stripes, but it's not going to be like a variegated yarn where you have a few stitches. You're going to have almost a whole round, and then it's just naturally going to change and almost a whole round again of the next color, and they're high contrast colors, as opposed to when you do a gradient type of a yarn, where it would be a long while before it would change colors. So I don't know, I've talked myself into this. I think this is a good idea for the sea glass tee. I think it could be really interesting. It's definitely going to be a challenge in terms of I pulled aside some of the scraps that I have that are more highly contrasted, like very variegated or self-striping. I think that there's going to be some moments in it that don't work out well by the way that things line up, but I'm going to try my best to make it work, and I think it could be chaotic in a really good way. So this is like a long-term, I am not casting this on right now. I haven't resolved for myself yet if I'm doing self-striping and variegated. I probably don't want the ribbing to be either of the above, because then ribbing looks really nice and clean when it's basically one color or tonal. So, and as I recall, the sea glass tee, I'm going to modify it and go with a bigger neckline and then do some math to not do as many increases, but it's still going to be a tighter crew neck than what I often like wearing. So I might use one of my fancier, like silkier or like merino cashmere nylon, something like that for the neckline. I'm not positive yet. I might also just do like black or white for the neckline. I don't know. I'm not going to cast this on for a while. I have identified a bin of, I pulled out some of the scraps that I have. My scraps go into a bunch of different projects. They're all headed in a different direction. But I pulled out the ones that are too contrasty, too many colors in one, basically exactly what I plan to do for this project. And I think once I have basically a few pounds of them, I don't know, to make a sweater, stranded colorwork sweater, I'm probably going to need close to 2 pounds of scraps, although it will be short sleeved. It's probably not going to be cropped. It's probably going to be longer. Anyway, so 1.5 pounds or 2. And basically I'm going to wait until I have a bunch of it and then sort of try to arrange a gradient of types, because I do want to be a little bit more thoughtful about it. If it was a blanket, I'd be totally fine with just this, and then I have that scrap, and then, but with a shirt that I want to be wearable, I do care a little bit more about trying to do maybe like neons in the beginning and then, you know, more primary colors at the end, or vice versa, because I do find I have some more neons and then I have some things that are, you know, classic red and blue, you know, red and yellow, and they tend to kind of fight each other. So I'm trying to resolve that issue in my head, but I'm very excited that that I got this pattern that I've had my eye on, and I now have a plan. And now I feel like if I get 2 pairs out of a self-striping sock yarn, that's fantastic. Why would I need 3 pairs of the same self-striping sock yarn? I don't. I do think self-striping is going to make for a better gift for family, and I'm sort of anticipating that around Christmas time I might be, don't worry, nobody in my family watches this, but I might be making some self-striping socks as gifts. So it's a nice idea to get 2 out of it so that I can give it away, but I still get to enjoy it for the long term myself. Call me selfish, I don't know. But why would I need 3? So I think it makes sense to save whatever is extra for this sea glass tea that's going to be just absolutely wild. And this then gives me permission, as I'm going to Maryland Sheep and Wool, to not just get something like minis that are tonal. That's smart when I have to do heels and toes, but to also think about highly variegated wild yarns that we classically see in a skein, and that it's a lot of the stuff that I dyed when I first started dyeing. I love the look of the skein. It's fabulous. And then you start using it and it sometimes pulls and it gets those weird stripes, which then over the body of a sweater go from being a wider stripe to a narrower, you know, it ends up being off-putting to some people. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I can show you. This is exactly what I'm talking about, this section here. All the other things were marled together, but this is where I got this kind of, not terrible, but obvious striping, because this is one yarn that I dyed that has, it was a mistake colorway. I spilled a little too much of the lilac when I was developing this color. And so it very much, the skein has lilac over here and then green over there. And every time you go around and you're knitting, you end up with this pooling that creates more stark stripes than you might want in a shirt. And sometimes that's a great look. And if that's your thing, and sometimes it's my thing, like there's nothing wrong with that. But for the sea glass tee, I'm sort of trying to avoid that. With the color work, you can to some degree, as long as you're using 2 things that are not too similar. I think it's going to break it up a lot more, and that's what I've seen in people's samples of the sea glass tee. So anyway, so now I'm excited to be able to buy and dye yarn that looks great in the skein, but then isn't necessarily the easiest yarn to use. Like, people commonly complain about variegated yarns, like how am I supposed to use this in a garment? So I think they look great for socks, and that's what I'm going to be doing, is using a lot of those yarns that I have in my stash for socks first, and then the scraps are going to become a sea glass tee. So it's basically going to be sock scraps, which is not, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. Like, plenty of people, I'm sure, have made the sea glass tee from sock scraps. And I'm sure people have used self-striping sock yarn too. So it may be that that I spent a lot of time thinking about something that I could have just found the idea online from somebody else. But I thought it would be really cool, and that's my plan. So now that I've resolved that, I feel a little better about having scraps of the self-striping sock yarn, because I tried to combine them because I was like racking my brain, like, what do I do with not nearly enough to make an actual sock again? So yeah, anyway, that's my plan. And yeah, and after saying that I probably wasn't going to buy much at Maryland Sheep and Wool, now my wheels are going. But anyway, the last thing I want to share, I know I talked about Geogradient last time, and I wanted to share that I have decided, I finished my Clue 2, which you know I had started in October, and I finished one side of it in October. I now finished the second side. So so I made the 2 sides exactly the same, but like different, a little bit different in terms of the beads and the mohair. But still using his stitch patterning, Stephen West's stitch patterning for the Geogradient. And I love the way that that came out. And because of the way that this came out, that was why I decided that it wouldn't make as much sense. The way that I modified it in terms of color and texture, it doesn't make as much sense with his next clue 3 and clue 4 for the pattern. So I've officially decided I'm not doing clue 3 and clue 4. I may use those stitch, like textured stitch patterns somewhere later, but what I'm going to do, because it's already got the I-cord on the top and the bottom, I'm going out, I'm going wide, and I'm going to do it as like a sampler. So I'm using my knitting dictionaries, my knitting stitch dictionaries, and this one you can barely see anything. In fact, you know, I only have 2 rows. So stay tuned for that one. But I'm not doing the same thing on both sides. I'm just doing whatever I feel like. I decided, in addition to the beads, to add some stash of a teal color. So I'm doing, and you can barely see the stitch pattern on that either, and that's okay. It's, if you have stitch dictionaries, it's the sugar cube pattern, so it's not going to be super obvious. None of these textures, they're going to be like pearl textures and lace textures. I don't think any of them are going to be all that obvious. But anyway, I've started doing that, and I think it's going to be, I like the addition. I love the purples, but I like the addition of the teal. I've got a couple teals I may add. Yeah, I think it's going to look nice. So anyway, the point is I'm working on it again and I'm having fun with it again. I'm excited about this. I like the way this has been coming out, even though you really can't see it on the camera. That's okay. That's not what matters. I can see it in person. And I think it's going to be really fun. And I like the fact that, you know, I may make this stripe, it's already 1 inch wide. Maybe I'm going to make it 3 inches wide. Maybe I'm going to make it, you know, 1.5 inches and I'm going to be like, oh, I'm bored of this. Well, guess what? I can pick up one of the other purple yarns and start doing a different texture. I can do little mini stripes, which I will do, like garter, micro stripes, whatever. I just think it has really opened up the options for me. And for something that is going to be such a big shawl and such a standout, it's so, this like purple mystery gradient that I had gotten from Punk Rock Unicorn is so vibrant that I really just want to make it special. So I might do more beads later on. I don't know. I'm definitely going to do more of the mohair because I like the mohair in it and it feels nice and soft. And this mohair I didn't have a plan for. So anyway, I'm just going to go nuts and go in both directions until this is a super duper long, roughly rectangular shawl. I might end up, I'm still going in the arrow direction, sort of like in this big chevron, but I might get to a point where I decide that I do want to do the corner to make it more of a parallelogram, basically. Because right now it's going to be long and wide like this, and I might end up just making it a rectangle, like doing corners on all 4 of those sections sort of, or I might end up making it more like a parallelogram and just doing sort of another triangle on opposite corners. I don't know. That's going to be a long time from now. Talk to me again next year. I feel like this is, it's a fingering weight. It's a lot of stitches. And because I'm having to think while doing these patterns, for at least some of them, you know, they're going to be lace and they're going to be different patterns that that have, like, this is a slip stitch pattern and this one has some purling in it. Anyway, I feel like it's going to be a long-term project, but I'm just so happy that I'm happy with it again. I just spent so long thinking, am I going to do clue 2 and or clue 3 and clue 4? Am I ever going to finish clue 2? Like, I spent so long being just underwhelmed, underexcited about it. And it spent a lot of time in a box. And sometimes things are in a box because I have too many whips and I want to make progress on things. I'm still excited about some of the whips that are up in that corner, but sometimes they're in a box because I'm like, it's dragging and I just feel less than thrilled about a project. So anyway, I'm really excited that I'm excited about it again. And I have been working on it in addition to working on my night shift. I hope to share a finished night shift with you next week. That's sort of the other project that I'm going to take with me. I might limit myself. No, I won't. I'm going to take the night shift. I'm going to take the socks that I have to graft and finish. And then I'll probably end up taking some spindle spinning because I can't imagine not spinning at all that weekend. But anyway, I've got a lot of weekends coming up where I'm hoping to be productive, and I think there's a chance I'll finish the night shift in this week. And if not, it's going to be a couple of weeks, and then I'll be able to share that. So, I'm getting there. I'm trucking along. And yeah, the Geogradient is going to be a long-term project, so I'm not going to share about it every week because I know that can get sort of redundant. But I'm just excited that I have a new direction for it at this point. So that's it. I will see you next week. And thank you for joining. Feel free to like and subscribe and write me a comment if you want to. Thanks for hanging out with me.